Hello and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. Now today we are going to be looking at some of my really sad Hoyas and we are going to be trying to save them. And these Hoyas I all got in the span of the last month or two, but I got them all from the same seller. And after talking to some friends and with talking to the seller about the most recent Hoya that came in, I've determined that it's basically because of how the seller handles these plants and how they inadequately ship them to me. So you would have seen in my last unboxing video, I actually unboxed a Hoya from them and it looked okay upon arrival, but then it just kind of, I completely unboxed it. I was able to look into the soil. During the unboxing video, I actually wasn't able to because there was so much tape on it that I couldn't even look. It took me like 10 minutes to get all the tape off. And that was actually one of the problems. But we'll get into that Hoya in a second. I just wanna show you all of the other ones first. So we have, this one is a Hoya erythrina and it sun stresses to a really pretty purple color. But unfortunately, this was actually one of the first ones I got from them and it has done absolutely nothing in my care. No new growth points, nothing. So I really want to take a closer look at it because it's done nothing. I just want to make sure it's okay, and I'm probably going to move it to a mossy mix just to make sure that the roots develop in a healthier way because I don't really trust it. I also have this Hoya Hanhye, I believe it's pronounced. And this one actually attempted to grow a new leaf, but it didn't even get half the size of a mature leaf before it aborted. And this stem, it had this really long runner, and there you go. It's actually dead. So the plant is actually dying back to all the way down here. So the runner is about half the size that it was. I'm gonna end up chopping that off. The leaves always seem like really thirsty. I should not be able to bend it back like that. And this one I'm also going to be moving to a different mix because I have a feeling I just need to reroot it. Another one that I have is this really big and once beautiful Hoya villosa. I mean, this one still is kind of pretty. These are really nice leaves here, but it's doing what the Hanhye did. And here, it's killing off the runner. It's killing off the runner here as well. This one actually, when it arrived, the runner was longer and it looked like it was gonna grow new leaves and then it just immediately died. It's also been very thirsty the entire time I have it. Again, Hoya leaves are supposed to be really firm, and I do water this about once a week. So I really suspect it's a root issue with this one because that was actually, so that's like two separate plants in there that it came with, but there was a third one, this. And this was at the end of this. It was like one long plant. This looked like a runner and then had leaves at the top. And literally after I unboxed it and went to repot the plant, I was able to just pull this out of the soil and it had absolutely no roots whatsoever. So this, from the day I got it, I've been trying to rehab and we're doing okay. We're starting to grow some roots now. I don't really want to pull it out of the pot, but I don't see any that I can easily show. But yeah, it's starting to recover, but this has been at least a month and a half for this. And just recently, and I keep this in a prop box full time, so really high humidity, consistent watering, and just recently these leaves have firmed up. They were very flimsy, like they just were dying for water, literally dying. And so this I have been able to save. I would like to see some new growth on it, but this has been a really long process and it's something that I want to try to do with all these other Hoyas. I did also get this aglonema, this spilt milk, and I love this plant. Like, it's a very nice plant, but when it arrived, the soil was sopping wet and I had to let it sit out and dry out for a week and a half to almost 2 weeks. And then I repotted it because the soil just looked kind of like garbage soil. And I've kind of been rehabbing the roots in moss. So while this is probably the nicest plant I've gotten from them, I mean, this leaf is going, and I think this leaf is gonna go too, it also has been a bit of a rehab. I also got an alocasia from them, an alocasia blue dragon, and I really wish that I had documented what happened to that plant because it was pretty tragic. So it arrived with the most hydrophobic soil I'd ever seen in my life, and it was in desperate need of a repot. There was literally a ball of roots coming out of the bottom of this plant, and I don't love having to repot plants soon after they arrive. I'd like to give them at least a week or two to acclimate, sometimes longer, to my environment, because these plants are coming from different places across the country. So I really didn't want to repot it, but I found myself having to water this plant every single day. If I did not give it water every single day, it was drooping, and I really kind of freak out when alocasias start to droop. So I decided I would go ahead and repot it, and it immediately died. So that was a shame. I really didn't feel like I had any other choice in that situation, just because the soil was the worst soil I've ever seen in my life. And I was able to get some corms from it, so I'm hoping that I can still have this plant, but it was pretty disappointing. And lastly, I do want to get to the Hoya that I got most recently, and this is kind of what made me bring up the issue with the seller. So this is the Hoya Jennifer. This was actually sold to me as a crassicalis, and if you follow me on Instagram, I did go through the differences between a Jennifer and a crassicalis. So a Jennifer here, you see the veining on the leaves, and they're very matte. They're not glossy, they're not waxy really. They're very matte leaf with the veining. And a crassicalis is actually a waxy leaf. Doesn't have veining. It's actually most similar to an incrusata, and a lot of people actually can't tell the difference if they don't see the blooms. And all it took for me was really quick researching to figure out all of that. Whereas they sold me this plant on a live auction as a crassicalis. They definitely have different values, I think. So I don't know, that was just kind of shady to begin with. And then when it arrived, like I said, the soil was completely taped down, and then underneath the soil was a wet paper towel. I know some people do that when they ship plants. I don't like to do that because then it just, if the plant is in soil, it just leaves like a wet, sappy mess of the soil, and that's what led to root rot with this plant. I did highlight it on my Instagram stories the other day that you can just pull the roots off, like they're dead. And I sent lots of pictures to the seller. I sent about 7 pictures. I showed them that you can just bend the leaves back no matter how much I water it. And they actually fought me on it and said that the plant is perfectly healthy. So the only way that I could get my money back is if I send this plant back. And they said that if I were to send it back and it arrived in the exact healthy condition that they claim it's in, then they will give me my money back. And they're expecting me to pay to send back this plant. I am not going to do that because I think that's just a scam at this point. I think that what they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, it's not healthy, you didn't ship it right, we're not going to refund you. And then they're going to turn around and they're going to sell this plant in their next auction, which that's just unprofessional, and it's bad business. I didn't even ask for much. I asked for a partial refund because I do want to try to save this, and a partial refund would have been $35. I paid $70 for the plant plus $15 priority shipping, and even though I paid for priority shipping, this was in the mail for 5 days. I did put my conversations up with them on Instagram if you want to see, but I do have them on my iPad so I can read it to you. Let's see. So I explained to them what the issue was. At first I was super polite and I was like, hey, like I think you used way too much tape and everything was like really wet and I just want to let you guys know, like, hopefully you can package better. And they just sent me an emoji of like the hands like this, and that honestly rubbed me the wrong way. So I pressed them a little bit and was like, hey, like there's significant root rot on my plant. And they were like, you need to be more upfront. And I was like, okay. They asked for photos. I sent them several photos of the plant, of the pot that it was originally in that had rotted roots all around the sides. And they said, let me see. They didn't believe when I unboxed it. I even filmed it, so I had a timestamp of the video and I unboxed it. They didn't believe it. And they told me that the plant looks plenty healthy and that a refund is not appropriate. And that's when they asked me to send it. And I said, so you expect me to send a plant that is rotting back to you, and that you will only refund me if you deem that it's healthy, and you expect me to pay for that? And they said, I don't agree with your assessment, but yes, it should be easy. Don't use way too much tape though. And they actually unsent that message, but I was quicker and I was able to screenshot it. And I just thought that was extremely unprofessional as a business to do something like that. If you want to keep your customers around, the most important thing is to make sure they're happy. And I guarantee that if anybody received a plant like this, they would not be happy with their purchase. So I just think their shop name is Urban Leaf Shop, and I'm not going to recommend them any further in future videos. I'm never going to be buying plants from them again, and I just want to caution you to stay away from them. But let's actually get to trying to save this plant. So I did put it on a trellis just because it was like really long and gangly, but that doesn't matter at this point. We're going to be chopping it up. So let me get it off of here. It sucks too because this was, like, even though it wasn't the plant that I thought I was getting, it is a Jennifer is a really pretty plant. Luckily, my friend Jessica sent me an actually healthy Jennifer cutting, and I took the trellis off and this just fell out completely. So I'm gonna have to vacuum that up later. Let's see. This came in the 6 or 8 inch hanging basket, and that's what's left. And it just come right off. So that's fun. Really disappointing. That's what's left. A plant of this size should not have a root ball like that. There's no circumstance in which that's the case. Okay, so I got a little cardboard box for this to sit in because it's getting my floor extremely dirty. And at this point, I just want to figure out where I'm going to cut this thing. I think I'm going to cut this singular leaf because it's just mostly runner from here. So I'm going to try to save this as a little cutting, and I'm probably just going to leave this runner on here because this appears to be a growth point. So we'll just save that. And let's see. I got a few suggestions from friends on what to do. A lot of them said put it in moss. A lot of them said just put the whole thing in water. Some people said chop the whole thing up. Some said just take a couple cuttings. So I think I am gonna leave because it looks like the base is quite thick. I think I'm gonna leave a lot of the thicker parts of the plant down here, probably take off all the rotted roots and try to save them. But I am gonna take a few cuttings because I feel like the more cuttings that I have, the better opportunity that I have to save this plant. And here is actually what was some new growth on the plant, and it killed the top. So that is quite unfortunate. This is the only Hoya that I've ordered from them that actually had some new growth on it, and I've talked to other people too. I posted this on my Instagram. My friend Jacqueline, who is at Jacqueline's Jungle on Instagram and Jacqueline's Jungle on YouTube, she actually has ordered way more plants than me from them, and they all ended up being terrible. And she received one most recently from the same auction that I got this one in that was half dead. Oh, and here's the peduncle, which they charge more money if their Hoya has a peduncle. So I probably paid like an extra $10 to $15 just because of a peduncle. But my friend Jacqueline, she actually, her last Hoya from them arrived like half dead, and they wouldn't refund her. Like, it actually looked worse than mine did when it arrived, and it's completely rotted as well. And she, like, it's actually really sad. A lot of her plants from them just ended up dying within weeks. So it's just kind of in a pattern. And ever since we kind of made it public on our Instagram stories and we both confronted the shop, they were extremely rude to us. They were mocking me. They were rude to her. They called her a liar. A lot of other people have come forward to us in our DMs saying similar experiences happened to them, that their plants from them just kept dying, things like that. So it's just not a reputable seller, and it's a shame because their prices were pretty good, but they were still retail prices, and we felt like we were paying retail prices for imports. So, like, if I wanted a plant that was gonna be a rehab, I would have just imported myself. So this is the part that I'm gonna take the roots off of, I think. I think I might just have to cut them. And they'll just go into water. Oh, it's a shame. There's a thick root here. Might leave that. Or no, that's not a root. That looks like, well, maybe. It's either a root or some stem. But we're just gonna reroot this entire thing. So I don't even really have to cut it. This stuff's just falling right off. Oh, such a shame. Okay. So I'm definitely gonna clean that up later and drop this into water, but we've got, I'll probably like wash it off in the sink. But it's a nice thick stem, so I'm hopeful, but I took lots of cuttings just in case. So we have the big, sort of, I guess we'll call it mother plant left. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cuttings. And hopefully I can save them. If I can, I'll have a nice big full pot of this plant, but I'm expecting to lose at least 50%, if not more. But fingers crossed, we'll see. We shall see. So we're done with this one. Just gonna put them on the floor at this point, honestly. And we're gonna do a little look at the Hanhie next. I'm just preparing to be sad at this point. For starters, we will definitely be chopping this dead runner off. It looks like it's dead all the way down here. Yeah, that was dead. So it's about half the runner. And let's see. Yeah, this is a similar situation. This came to me in a 4 or 5 inch pot. And typically, if you've had a plant for a month and a half, you're gonna have more roots than what you started with. And these, her barely even roots. I don't even know what you call it. So I might chop this up. I feel like I should at least take a cutting of this one up top. But I'm gonna have to reroot this as well. This is terrible. So that's really disappointing. I also downsized the pot from the pot that it came in. This is 3.5, I think, 3 or 3.5 inch pot. Came in a 4 or 5 inch, so. Oh man. Yeah, we'll just take a cutting. Oh no, this leaf is wrinkly. It's gonna fall off if I take the cutting. So I think, I don't even know if it's gonna pick that up. But it's super wrinkly up top. So I think I'm just gonna try to rehydrate this first, maybe in water, and then we will cut it later. That's disappointing. Okay. Next, we're gonna do the Erythrina. Now this one, I have no room to cut it. There's not really much in the way of internodal spacing. So we'll see. This one's downsized to an even smaller pot. This came in a 4-inch pot. Now this one's actually, I think, doing a little better than the others. Yeah, this one's okay. I still might have to downsize the pot even further. Or maybe not, I don't know. But this one's actually doing fine. So I'm gonna just repot it back in here. Those are actually, I mean, they're thin roots, but they're alive. So, oh, and it grew onto my leca. So yeah, this is one plant that's actually alive. We have a winner. It's not a total disaster here. So I'm just gonna repot this back up and we'll give it a drink later. I'm sorry for disturbing you, but we had to check. So we got one for 4 because the alocasia's dead. I might have to fix that later, but it's alive. So that's the Erythrina. It's doing nothing, but the roots are pretty healthy. They're just way smaller, the root ball, than the pot said it was. And that's like the other thing that's like a lot of sellers do, especially garden centers. Like, don't be afraid to put it in a smaller pot. People like to charge set prices for it being a 4-inch or a 6-inch pot, but if a plant doesn't need it, then give it a smaller pot. It'll be healthier for it and it'll thank you. Now this one I don't really want to fully repot. Just kind of want to check and see how it's doing. Okay, so since putting it in the moss, it hasn't done much of anything, but the roots are firm. So, oh, there went some leca, but that's fine. I don't want to disturb it too much, so we'll just put it back in there. Send it on its merry way. And lastly, we're gonna do the Velosa, and this one actually hurts because this is the most expensive plant that I got. And I also downsized it. I think it was in a 6-inch pot. I downsized it to this wide, shallow 4.5-inch azalea pot. And just probably, yeah, rip that off. And I took off the dead runner here. And if you look at it, that's a good root. But these on this side are dead. Okay, so we're halfway. Okay, so we have, I can show it, some white root. Okay, don't really know what's happening with the camera, but as I was saying, some white roots, some dead roots. I feel like I should chop this maybe, because if I put this in any smaller pot, like it's not gonna stay upright and my cats will be knocking it over. I don't know. I feel like it might have an easier time sustaining itself as well, but I wanted a big plant. Like that's why I ordered these plants from Urban Leaf Shop, so it's really disappointing. I guess I'll decide what I'm gonna do. So I did take some cuttings of the Jennifer. We have this mother plant, I guess you could call it, that I'm gonna keep whole and try to save as is. And then I took 6 cuttings here. So we've got a couple like this. We've got a few with runners, and we have this one. So I'm going to be potting them up into these little 5 ounce cups, not 5 inch. Just put them in here, put them in my pot box. They're gonna have really high humidity and hopefully they'll get better. I don't have too much faith in them, but I'm hoping for at least 50% survival rate with these plants, and I'm gonna try to do my best to save all of them, and I will definitely keep you updated. Here are some of the cuttings now, and this is the Hoya Hanhie. It did have some roots that were actually still good, so I figured I would just put it in the moss and see what happens. And then for the Jennifers, I am kind of experimenting. I have some in perlite, some that are in a moss and perlite mix, some with a perlite reservoir, and then I have the large one and a couple of the smaller cuttings in water. And we're just gonna see what happens. Because I have been mostly successful with this Velosa back here, I am a little bit more optimistic, but we'll see what happens. So that's it for us today. We definitely had some technical issues. I apologize for that, but I am looking forward a little bit to trying to save these plants, and I'm hoping I can give you an update and kind of like a guide on how to rehab them in the future. And I just want to say to be really wary and cautious of sellers. I mean, they're not all like that. Like most sellers out there are really nice, but sometimes there is a bad egg, and if you are a buyer, you do have rights and you should stick up for yourself. But thank you for watching. We are really happy you're here. If you liked this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up down below. You can tell me in the comment section any experiences that you have had, good or bad, with sellers, and we will catch you in the next one.